We are live. Urvashi, you can go ahead.
Hello, greetings everyone, and welcome to this Sapan event. Our event today is called Patriarchal Backlash, Bangladeshi Women Speak Out. I'm Urvashi Butalia. I'm a writer and a publisher based in Delhi. I'm really honored to be your host today for this program organized by the South Asia Peace Action Network, or Sapan, as we call it. We are a collaborative, a cross-border, a cross-regional, a cross-diasporic, an intergenerational, and a volunteer-driven organization. We're endorsed by more than 100 organizations and several hundred individuals. The Sapan founding charter calls on the governments and peoples of
Urvashi, you are muted.
I'm so sorry. The Sapan founding charter, which you see on your screen in front of you, calls on the governments and peoples of South Asian nations to institute soft borders to allow for the freedom of trade and travel to our countries, to institute human rights and dignity for all citizens, including religious and ethnic minorities, and to cooperate in all areas, particularly related to public health, culture, and legal reform, as well as education, environment, climate change, and more. The order is on, the Sapan Charter is online in several languages at our website, www.southasiapeace.com. Please do endorse it if you haven't already done so. Please do join our growing movement for peace in the region and beyond. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If it's not your first time with us, still welcome. We hold online discussions on a variety of issues on the last Sunday of most months. The discussion we are here for today focuses on how women's leadership and contributions to social and political movements have made significant strides across South Asia, despite having faced enormous resistance. As we know, women's voices often trigger patriarchal power structures in all the dynamics of society, whether they're religious, whether they're social, whether they're political. Today, we are choosing to focus on Bangladesh as a compelling case study of how the progress made by women, which has been so real and so visible in Bangladesh, has triggered backlash, and what this reveals about the broader dynamics across our region. This discussion also marks the Monsoon Revolution anniversary as we revisit movements led by women, often provoking intense reactions from patriarchal structures around us. With today's discussion, we also launch a new Sapan series on gender, power, and resistance across South Asia, beginning, of course, with Bangladesh and moving on later to other countries. Women's agency and empowerment in Bangladesh has, as we know, met with fierce opposition, particularly in recent years, from right-wing religious groups, as well as some political forces who see it as a threat to cultural and religious identity in the region. In today's rapidly changing social, global, and political landscape, we certainly need more women's voices. That has never been more clear than it is today. And we need to explore how we can strategize more effectively to move the needle towards justice, which has been lacking for so long. Before we start, I'd like to just put some house rules before you, and we'd be grateful if you could help us in keeping to those. We ask that you mute your microphones. We ask that you be patient with technical difficulties. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Please use the chat for questions or comments. Keep them on topic and keep them always respectful, please. And as always, we invite suggestions and feedback from everyone. Traditionally, we begin Sapan events with a brief commemoration of those whose legacy we take forward, as well as remember those who have departed over the past month or so. For this, I'm going to ask my colleague, Bina Sarwar, to put up the names and talk about this. So Bina, over to you.
Thank you, Urvashi. So we start with the in memoriam. which is honoring our visionaries. Just give you a moment to take in all these wonderful people whose legacies we take forward. And some comrades who've departed since we started South Asia Peace Action Network. And our recent comrade who left us, Hilda Saeed, who passed away in Karachi, who was a foundational figure in the Women's Action Forum. Thank you. And before closing, I'd just like to also just say a personal condolence to all those who were closely connected to Amir Aziz Sayed in Karachi, who passed away recently. And could we just have a moment of silence for that before I hand it back to you, Urvashi? Thank you. Thank you, Urvashi. Back to
Thank
you.
you, Bina. Thank you so much. Friends, we now come to our panel discussion, which is moderated by Khawar Mumtaz. I don't think anyone in this audience needs an introduction to Khawar, but nonetheless, it's my pleasure to introduce her. Khawar is a Pakistani women's rights activist. She's a feminist author. She's a university professor. She is the former chairperson of the National Commission on the Status of Women in Pakistan. She's received many, many awards for her contributions to women's empowerment, and she's contributed to several books, both in her capacity as author and as editor. It's also, Khawar, over to you to take over the discussion.
Thank you, Urvashi, and thank you, everybody who's here. Welcome and greetings. We start this. We've just had a very clear introduction of why we're meeting today in Sapan to discuss something that's fairly widespread. That whenever women achieve certain successes, get their rights, there is a backlash. And this we've noticed and experienced over the years at every juncture. We also see that when there are social movements and political movements, women are inducted into it, they join fully with full force and contribute to those struggles, whether it is the Mao struggle in Nepal or whether it is the liberation war in Bangladesh or in other places in Pakistan also. Each time the backlash comes from a certain set of section of society, and that backlash resists. I mean, it's very ironical that women become part of larger movements, and then as soon as a movement achieves some of its goals, they are pushed back. And our latest example, as we've just heard, is in Bangladesh, where there's been a pushback after. It's ironical again that women were participants in the upheaval in last about a year ago, which overturned Sheikh Hasina's government, and then the move by this interim government to take forward the women's agenda has been met with a severe resistance. So today we have a wonderful panel from Bangladesh. Uh, I will uh, I will introduce them as we go along. There's Shireen Haq. There is Dr. Uh, Fawzia Moslem. We have Maheen Sultan, and we have our young activist artist Shakila. So I think we will start with Shireen. Shireen, since you were the chair of the interim government's Reform Commission on Women's Affairs, and the kind of and the report that you submitted, a very apparently comprehensive, all-encompassing, looking at different aspects of women's lives, has received a huge backlash. We'd like to hear from you about what exactly is the bone of contention and how it's being seen by society. But very importantly, we've also seen when there is a resistance to women's progress, political parties and the government seems to appease those resistors, the groups that oppose women's emancipation. So maybe you could also look at that aspect. So over to you. You have 7 minutes. We can even have a second round after our finish first sort of 7 minutes each.
Thank you, Rani. Um, this is a great opportunity to look back at what happened in July, August in Bangladesh and how um, our own feelings and reactions about it has evolved and changed over time. So in the uprising that we had, um, actually, some people even called it a revolution at that time. I never thought it was a revolution because there was nothing fundamental that had changed. We had an uprising, a regime change, but the culture of misogyny and of the brutalization of women and the public assertion of male dominance all remain intact and hegemonic. So, in a sense that we had this uprising, the irony of it is that it was thousands of young women who actually led the protests in many cases, who participated in the protests. And but once things started to settle down, the new government was formed on the 8th of August, and suddenly we see that these women have kind of disappeared from the public public view. Except for a few, token. Well, not all were not token, but anyway, but except for a handful, the huge presence of women during the uprising was nowhere to be found, and this was something that a lot of other people have commented on as well, and a lot of people have actually raised the question: where have all the women gone? And some groups had even organized a seminar with that title, where have all the women gone? So this is something of concern to many women's organizations and the women's movement at large. And this then combined with the reaction to the Women's Commission report, which was condemned and vilified by the Hifazat-e-Islam, which is a right-wing religious group, but which have had alliances with many ruling parties in the past, including the Awami League. So Hifazat-e-Islam actually said that this report should be thrown into the bin, and the people who have written this report, which means a commission, of which I happen to be the chair, but I had a wonderful team working with me. Maheen is here. She was also a member of the commission. And in selecting the members of the commission, I tried to have representation from the labor movement, from migrant workers movement, from the legal community, from the development workers, from research, and health, public health, especially women's health and rights. And I thought we had a fairly good balanced team. That a lot of people have been complaining and protesting that we did not have any religious scholars in our group. And I said my reaction to that has been that if we were to try and represent every religious group, every language group, every ethnic group, and every class, then we would need a 150-member commission, which was not practical. So in a sense, the way we try to fill that gap is to have consultations with different constituencies and different groups. And besides our own meetings, we worked for 4 months, and we had, I think, about 39 meetings in those 4 months. Besides those 39 meetings, we also had consultations both in Dhaka with different women of different backgrounds, different professions, and different class backgrounds, etc. And also outside Dhaka. We actually started in Rangamati, which is in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, and we had, I can't remember all the names of the places, but anyway, we had several of those consultations outside Dhaka, and we tried to pull together what was suggested and what was proposed from these meetings. So in a sense, a lot of the proposals which we put together, which was 433 proposals, Many of those came out of the consultation meetings themselves, and then many from our own discussions. The first objection was that was around three issues: marital rape, equal inheritance, and the recognition of sex workers. This was what actually started the public condemnation of our report and of the commission itself. And it just shows that, although we had this huge uprising, which was very inspirational for us, and actually, I personally felt very inspired by the young women who were participating, that they had been able to achieve something we had not in the last 50 years. And they had created the space to bring up issues, to bring to the table many issues which had not been spoken about. And I have been disappointed since. I think a lot of people have experienced disappointment, but I don't want to speak for others. But I have been disappointed at how quickly the traditional male dominance has taken over. Many of these young, bright, young women activists who led the protests, who were very much in the front line, have been pushed out or have been edged out. Some have left of their own because they wanted to get back to their studies, they wanted to go back to being students, but some have definitely edged out. And so this is something that we did not expect, and maybe that was foolish because nothing has changed. Today I read an article by one of our daughters, a brilliant piece by Shushmita Pritha, which actually says it much better than I can say it, and is very articulate about what happened and what went wrong. Although the government then decided to form these commissions, on 18th of November, there was a Gazette notification. Actually, there was the first Gazette notification formed 6 commissions, of which women, labor, health were not there. Subsequently, somebody must have pointed out that this was a big gap, and it was an embarrassingly big gap, that 5 more commissions were then formed, of which the Women's Affairs Commission was one. And we took this opportunity to put forward, to put on the table suggestions and proposals for reforms which we felt were doable within the time of the interim government itself, although we don't know how long that will be. The second set of proposals were ones we felt the next elected government would consider. So those are the desirables. And finally, we also put in the report what the dreams of the women's movement has been. And we felt this was an opportunity to bring to the public domain, what do women really want? For people to understand, or if not understand, at least to become acquainted with our demands, with our long-term demands. And so this is how the report that we submitted, this is how it is structured. So doables, desirables, and dreams. And we actually tried to address both the practical needs of women, as well as what are the strategic interests in changing the position of women in society and the economy. And in this, out of these 433 proposals, the 3 that Hifazat picked up, as I mentioned, meant that many people then didn't bother to read the other 430. And I know it's not an easy task to go through all of these 430 proposals, but I'm also disappointed that many of our fellow activists and fellow travelers have also not bothered. Some scholars are taking interest, but many do not. And then the most disappointing has been that many of our fellow commissions have not bothered.
Thank
Because
you.
let me have some water.
Please go ahead. I think, Shireen, you've given
Yeah.
us exactly what has happened and transpired. I'd come back to you because I'd like to take on some more aspects. But before
Okay.
I go on, I'd like to just, I mean, everybody knows Shireen, and I didn't properly introduce her. But for people who are not from Bangladesh or from the region, Shireen is an activist. She's a founder member of Naripokkho, one of the leading Bangladesh's women's rights, health rights, and citizens' rights organization. Has been working for many years, and now she was I think, very aptly made the chair of this commission and has done this, as always. My own experience with Shireen, to work collectively and get as many voices into the process as possible. And it is indeed sad, and we are going through in Pakistan a similar situation where the parliament recently passed the law to raise the age of marriage for girls to 18 years. And the religious parties and groups have announced a street movement against that, because the law says, the new law that has been passed says that if any marriage below the age of 18 would be considered marital rape. It won't be maritable, but it would be considered rape. They haven't mentioned marital rape anywhere, but any marriage earlier than 18 consummated would mean a rape has occurred, criminalized. So there's a lot of backlash on it, because the Council of Islamic Ideology in Pakistan earlier had said that there should be 18 is no 12 years, maybe the minimum age of marriage for women. So there's been this controversy going on, and we keep finding again and again that there's silence around it from mainstream parties as well as many others. So anyway, I'll ask. I think I would like to ask Dr. Fawzia, who has a long-term involvement, an activist, a freedom fighter in the liberation war, um, who's been struggling for women's equality and empowerment, and heads the biggest platform for women's rights, the Bangladesh Mahila Parishad. Dr. Fawzia, I'd like to ask you, especially because of your long-term experience and your organization, which is really a very huge platform, and Bangladesh has always been known for mobilizing thousands of women whenever issues come up. So I was just wondering, what how do you see this development, and how do we move forward? And because we are talking about the changing of the mind change of people the male dominated society, and what is your experience, and what is your how far we've moved forward, and how these backlash pushes us backwards. So any of your experience and thoughts about the future, especially how has it been dealt with, the resistance to women's progress, and women's resistance to that resistance?
Thank you for inviting me to join this panel, panel of Sapan. I like to convey my greetings to all the members of the platform. Actually, the Bangladeshi woman has earned a lot. They have many advancement. After advancement is there, but the struggle is always in process. We could not, you can see the women in every field of sphere of life, but they have to struggle to retain her position, to sustain the advancement. Every time they have to struggle for each. Recently, as you told, I think the first problem was encouragement of mob violence. After the August movement, after Hasina was overthrown, there appeared a large gang of mob. The first target was women. They started moral policing, and they humiliated women everywhere, on their dress, on their comment, and everything. They are humiliating the women in front of everybody. And there was no protest against it from the society or from the government also. So these lead women in a vulnerable position. And this actually this has continued till the report of Women Reform Commission published. After the Reform Commission published its report, it is the continuation of that violence. And I think it is encouraged by the religious group, by the misogyny group from the patriarchy. And patriarchy actually have many faces. And it changes its faces according to situation. So when they saw that, when they find that there is no law and order situation is very vulnerable position, they use mob violence. When they oppose the three main recommendation of Women Reform Commission about inheritance of law. And equal inheritance is a demand of women movement from a long time. But this time it was put in the table, and it was opposed by from the religious community by saying that it is against the Sharia. And actually in 2019, I think, there was a fight against demonstration of women movement for equal inheritance law. At that time, Hipajot played the same role. And the government at that time was feared to disturb Hipajot. They surrendered to their issue. So in this way, they are trying to bring women movement and religion in confrontation. But the women movement is very careful, and we know that this is not an issue of religion. This is an issue of women's human rights, and which our constitution, Bangladeshi constitution, protects women's human rights irrespective of all gender, religion, and other differences. It covers all the diverse groups to enjoy equal rights in every sphere of life, but there is a gap that personal life is not included in it. So from us, we are fighting for a long time to have a personal law according to the constitution and according to the civil laws of the country. And this is one of the most important agenda of women rights movement. And as I feel from my experience, that the misogyny is deeply seated within the mindset of not only men, but some women also bears the culture of patriarchy. And they are also not misogyny, but the thoughts of patriarchy is embedded in women also. So we have to face these two things simultaneously in accordance to the, in addition to the communalism, the access to justice, overcoming mob violence, and patriarchy. But I think from my journey that there is no other way except to unite all women for an issue and for to protect our women human rights and to advance and to carry on that movement. And I feel the women of Bangladesh at present moment is being emancipated from of their own. The women are more enlightened before that than past, and they are determined to enjoy their rights from all spheres of life. So this is one of our very one of our main strength of women movement and women community as a whole. But we still have to fight for democracy, because without democracy, we cannot enjoy, we cannot fight the other backwardness of the society. But to fight the other backwardness in society, we need to have democratic right in the society. And now we are coming to know that Bangladesh is soon go to election, and you can see that in that on the issue of representation of women in parliament, there debate has been raised, and the women movement want to have the direct election in the women seats, but the major political party is not agreeing on that because of their loss of their constituency, because of their loss of their leadership, and maybe because of they don't want to see the women in the decision making process. So we have to go more far away. We know that against the male chauvinism, against the communalism, and to protect democracy, we have to go further away. But I think the women of Bangladesh, to some extent, are ready and strong enough to fight these things. As for instance, I can say, as Shireen told, that after the publishing of the Women's Commission report, there is a strong opposition from the religious group. But when women's movement stood against it, they are not retrieving, but they're a bit tactical now. So I think the only thing we can face to face the backlash, we have to unite again and to go further and raise our voice and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Fawzia. You raised some very important issues, especially the issues that we are all faced with in the region, and the women's movements everywhere receive this kind of backlash. But I think the important thing is that you're saying is that there's been a shift in the resistance from the misogynistic patriarchal forces, which is the response in mob violence. Mob violence seems to have surfaced in all our region against any issue that the mobsters don't like. It becomes mob violence with no logic, no reasoning, no rationality. And so there's been a change in this way women's rights are resisted. The other thing is that there is a rise also in moral policing. So we also see that there is perhaps a shift in the power structures. Power is now more in the hands of the religious right, it seems. There's a resurgence of that sort across the globe, but more so in our own region. And I think the important thing is that the need for uniting, and most importantly, the struggle has to go on. We can't sit back on our achievements because they're always under threat. I'm going to ask Maheen Sultan now, as somebody who has been an activist, but also a member of this commission that Shireen just talked to us about. And your engagement, really, your focus has been on social transformation. So Maheen, I'd like to talk to you because both Shireen and Dr. Fawzia have highlighted how the embedded misogyny in our society, and patriarchy, not only amongst men, but also amongst women. And we also see, on the other hand, that women have moved forward. There is more expression of agency and voice. Even when there is a backlash, women don't stop raising their voice. How do we transform our society? And it's a challenge for all of us. It's not an easy task. How do we win over allies from within the larger society, especially for men? Because women have become enlightened, they are much more aware, but is there a parallel understanding of the right of women's for struggle for equal rights and equity? So maybe your experience and how you see what's happening in Bangladesh, because we're interested in Bangladesh because this is the most recent happening, and we've all been experiencing these kind of backlashes. So maybe you give us some insights from your experience of transformation. Because as somebody just mentioned, these struggles are also very inspiring for women who've participated. They open different, their minds get opened. And but then we don't find similar kind of transformation in the male mind, especially of the religious right. So it's
Thank you very
up to
much, Khawar, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. As you might remember, I'm also involved in research on backlash. So it's very interesting that from researching backlash, we've now become objects of backlash. So that was very interesting to be, part of facing it. Because as part of my institute, we've been part of regional research programs working with Mahila Parishad and Naripokkho to understand how the women's movement, gender justice, faces backlash on various issues. So it's not new. But what is interesting is that there are periods when there's an exacerbation, when there are peaks we can see of the backlash. And this political transition, I think, has been one such period which we need to understand better. So at the same time as there was an opening up of opportunities, it's been an opening up of opportunities for everybody and all different opinions, not just for gender justice activists. Like, when the struggle started and people were speaking of non-discrimination and inclusiveness, we from the women's movement, we thought that this is an opportunity to talk about non-discrimination for women and inclusiveness of the women's agenda. But others saw it as an opportunity to bring forth their other agendas. So we have had to struggle with this. And it's interesting is in the report, as you said, we highlighted the gains made by the women's movement. I mean, we had a section on that. And we have recommendations on things which are ongoing, which are easily done, half of which have already been started, and then some dreams. So these dreams are also, our long-term goals, also provoked a lot of reaction and opposition, like this demand for equal inheritance rights and equal rights in the family. We put it as something that would be in the immediate term optional, and only in the long term we would want a uniform civil code. But just the idea that even in the long term that this would be something that we are hoping for is something that triggered them off. Another thing I'd like to emphasize is that though it was the right wing which was very vocal on the streets, Hefazat and groups affiliated with them, but unfortunately this reaction was not just limited to them. It was also, we had women from the right also speaking up for them, a sort of among the general public, that why are you attacking our religion? So we have seen this in our previous backlash research as well, that you can't always target the right-wing religious groups. It's in the community, sometimes it's from the family, it's in different institutions, it's among women themselves. So the backlash has to be seen as something very diffuse. Sometimes there are identified actors, but we can't just say it's not a unified movement. And then the manifestations, it was very interesting, as Shireen might have mentioned a little bit, while there were direct attacks, like, effigies being beaten up, and Shireen's posters had, shoes thrown at it. But also, this thing, we were all called sex workers, though since we're speaking up for the rights of sex workers in itself, that wasn't an insult. But, just the fact that delegitimizing the whole commission by saying that we were not representative and we had to defend ourselves by explaining the process, which most people didn't bother looking into. And having women speaking out against us, in the sense saying that, oh, these women don't represent the real Muslim women, and they don't understand religion, etc., etc. Whereas we kept saying that we were not dealing with religion, we were coming at it from a women's rights perspective and from what women themselves are wanting and saying. So another point I'd like to make is that, as you were saying, that I think Fawzia mentioned, or was it Khawar, that the overall international context also determines what happens in the country. So this overall, different crises that we're going through, these polycrises after COVID, the overall, the different militarization, autocratization, and it's just not limited to a country. So that determines the kind of political space and social space we're operating in, which means that the backlash can be expressed much more openly. The threats are voiced much more explicitly, and people are feeling more threatened and more insecure, both women and the LGBT community. So that is a very real factor. Another issue is that we have seen this in other cases that we researched. Sometimes the allies that the women's movement counts on, or that, that you think that they are progressive, that they will speak for us, that they believe in things that are similar to us. But when it comes to these situations of conflict or where there's such open opposition, then those allies step away or fall silent or just, disassociate themselves. And as Shireen was saying, this was also very disappointing for us. We didn't expect much support from the political parties, but we had expected much more support from NGOs, civil society, the people we had been in struggles together with. It's only the actors in the women's movement and activists in the women's movement who spoke up and who were at the forefront and, who were there with us. Because in fact, I think, the commission report really reflects the demands of the women's movement. So as Fawzia will say that, a lot of Mahila Parishad and Naripokkho's demands are in the report. So the women's movement did stand with us. But on the state, we were very disappointed that although the interim government had asked for this commission and had, mandated this commission, they didn't take a single step or say a single word to say that this is up for debate, but you don't have to vilify the commission. It's not up for attack, it's up for discussion. So that was another disappointment, that the interim government also just was silent and just stepped aside.
Thank you, Maheen. I think you have really, first of all, you do some very seminal research, and it would be nice if we could have it shared more widely across the region, especially because there are so many similarities in the region and in the response of our governments, even of our allies, as you say. You're talking about your government not coming up to back the commission and support the commission. We had 3 commission reports on status of women, which were all classified when they came out, because the government of the day did not want to see the reality that those reports were reflecting. So I think we all have similar experiences, but and also the whole international context, we cannot ignore it, because it has implications and impact on our governments and on our democracies also. And therefore it becomes even sadder when you see that your allies are not coming forward to support you, and that the women's, and sometimes there are also rifts within the women's movement on some of these issues. So I think those are our challenges that we constantly have to deal with and factor in. But what I really was impressed when Shireen talked about the way the report was structured, where instead of picking up 3 things which were part of a dream and not focusing on the doables, at least from the government, it comes as a surprise. I'm going to talk to Shakila Khatun now, the young artist who's here, who comes from a rural background, has experienced life there, and is now working in the city as an upcoming and artist. How do you see, because we come from a generation, and all those who've spoken so far, of a generation who been part of the movement, initiated movements, have brought many achievements to the women's situation and brought the women's issues on the agenda of political parties, even if the political parties are not always behind you, and have created opportunities and spaces for themselves and for all women in that struggle for equality and justice. How do you see as a youngster, and I'm sure you may have been part of the movement in the August movement last year, how do you see the future in terms of your colleagues, young colleagues? How many allies do we manage to bring to the struggle for justice, which is a constitutional struggle, and also the politicization of religion? Everything then becomes uh, kosher if you say this is for religion or not religion. Rights somehow get subsumed. So anyway, we'd like to hear the younger people's point of view of how they want to see and the spaces that they have already utilized, have been created for them. How do they see the future and how do they see their allies who've been their allies in struggles, in political struggles also? You're muted.
Thank you. I think it is a great opportunity for me being a part like a discussion, and I think the Women Commission is one of the most significant achievement of Bangladeshi women activists and also our women. I would like to share the challenges we face right now after the Women Commission. Not because of commission, but because of some right-wing political parties and some thoughts related to them, such as after this commission, when sex workers' rights was discussed and recognition of sex workers was prominent discussion all over the country, then I see a alarming discussion that one of health content creator content creator uh, she was deliberately she was deliberately trying
Excuse
to
me,
establish
Shakila, your
that.
voice is not very, sorry, your voice is not very clear. Can you bring the mic nearer to your mouth? Yes.
Okay, okay, so I repeat, after the recognition of sex worker discussion, some of our right-wing political parties, including Efizat Islam, they call uh, for a mass movement, and uh, 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 it could be called a mob violence. And in our literated person, some of content creators, I face that they raise voice against this and they try to establish that this is a violence of our culture, our society, and our family structure. And even they try to prove that if we recognize our sex worker, then our young generation, like students of universities, would be engaged in this profession. Uh, so I think it is very alarming to us that in Bangladesh it is not easy to study in a university because we have to face our university administrations, we have to face our classmates, we have to face our social values, so-called social values, those turn us behind the so-called uh, safety. So it is very hard to study in Bangladesh. But when content creator uh, deliberately trying to establish that this commission will promote the university women students to take part in sex worker, So then it is very alarming, and I think we want to talk more and more and discuss more and more on this topic. And another alarming topic I think discussed when the uh, commission published their report is marital rape, and we also notice that when Society Islam and some of their allies called their movement, some of our leaders from July uprising were present there. It is very alarming because we call for inclusion, call for justice, and we call for equal society and equal country. But when our leaders present there and they were a prominent part of the uh, we, of this violence, of this mobs, and so many activities which was happened against women rights. So we fight all together for women rights, uh, human right, inclusion, but some of our leaders are not, uh, I think, what I can say, some of our leaders are not aware of human right, or they are not aware of women right. And I think from this perspective, they become part of such activities. And I also want to discuss that equal right of inherited property is the important thing, because in our country, our government and our government is called for women and youth to become entrepreneur. But when I or us want to be an entrepreneur, one of the most uh, significant issue is economical support. Economical support we can make easily from bank or anywhere, but if we inadvertently get our uh, property right, equal property right, I think we could uh, grow up as an entrepreneur, and we could make new policies for represent Bangladesh and represent Bangladeshi youth. I thought you may be concerned about that. One of our leaders of July uprising has declared that she could not be the part of the organization that formed from the July organization because of bullying, and which is because she is a woman. She is a woman, and she holds an important participation. She holds an important participation in the uh, July uprising. So it is very alarming for us that we took part in a uprising like July uprising, but we cannot represent ourselves in those organizations that form from that uprising. So these are the most alarming issues I think we face now this time. Uh,
Thank you. Thank you, Shakila. I think you pointed out to the challenges, and those challenges have continued through the generations, but spaces have also been created, as our speakers have earlier said, and also you have said, that spaces do get created, but the challenges persist, and those challenges have to do with gender perspectives as well as power structures, I think. The exercise of power that men often feel that they have. Uh, Before I would like to give everybody, all these panelists, at least a couple of minutes each, if they could talk about. There have been some suggestions already that how we can, what the strategies can be. Shiri, Dr. Fawzia has pointed to some, which are, of course, to have a united front of women and also to struggle together. Maheen has also talked about how situations peak, and how these and how there are times when the opposition or to women's rights becomes very volatile, and as in the whole issue of how it is met through mob violence, and that has become quite a, how do we move towards that? But I would like to get your each one of you take a minute each or 2 minutes each to see what steps can we take not only for Bangladesh, but I think those will apply to all of us because we are losing allies. We want to maintain our allies, even if governments, because of their power struggles, align with some of those who are anti-women. I think our allies should stay with us as well as our the women's movement needs unification. And what best strategy to change to get people to think differently for democracy as well as for the right of everybody that our constitutions warranty. So maybe some insights from you on how to move forward in terms of strategies. As Dr. Fawzia said, the caution has become a tactic, but then what is a strategy? So over to you, whoever, maybe Shireen, you start first, and then we can have Dr. Fawzia and Maheen also. And then I'll open it up for questions and discussion from the floor.
Maybe somebody else can start. I'm actually lost about strategies.
Okay. Maybe Dr. Fawzia, would you like to come in and then Maheen, because of your insights through research? Dr. Fawzia?
Written
You made some suggestions already. Mhm.
strategy, basically, we have to be on the road. We have to raise our voice, and in every situation when women's right is violated, we have to very much alert to have the to tackle the situation. As for example, now presently, yesterday we had a Hindu woman have been raped in outside Dhaka. So now we are going to arrange a all women's movement group to make a program against it. So every human right violation should not be be unattended. We have to move in at this situation. And I want to raise one question, especially to Maheen, as she is a researcher. In my opinion, I think that the uprising that has happened in July has a own limitation, or should I say spillage, because it was started with the removal of quota for everyone. But removal of women quota is against women's empowerment at that distance. So we have to raise again that question, introduce women's quota to ensure its empowerment. And I think this is a spillage of that movement, and that should be recovered. But as you heard from everybody, that present government, interim government, is not acting according to expectation on the issue of women. So we have to make more pressure on him. We have to make them pressurized so that they become vocal on women condition. And at the same time, may we have a small trend from the civil society, because actually it has a long time. The new generation of the civil society is not so much oriented about women's movement. So we have to develop a more close ally group from our civil society, who is believes in women's empowerment, who try to help women's. Okay, I think I have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fawzia. Yes, Maheen?
Fawzia was talking about quotas. So what we did in the commission report, we have firmly put it as a principle that one needs special affirmative action. And nobody has reacted to that. And when we have talked to different groups like ethnic minorities, marginalized, geographically marginalized populations, this is something everybody is very strongly for. So I think there's a strong enough force to want this, and one can counter the politicization of quotas that happened before. Among the strategies we have found, one is what we've called strategic invisibility, or working under the radar, doing things with allies and not making a big fuss about it. From the commission, we've been reaching out to different ministries, and some ministries have been quite open and willing to work with us to see how we can take things forward, and not publicizing it too much, but just maybe leaving behind some things. And there are positive, secretaries, joint secretaries in different places that we can reach out to. Another thing is, though we've been, saying our allies are turning against us, but we have alliances like with the labor movement. And we've been working very closely with the Labor Commission. And there are allies. I think the women's movement has become better as working across generations, are more sensitive to the need to work across generations. So that is also giving strength. Another thing, not just a national level movement and issues, but then it trickles down, or it's bottom up, that the same demands, same issues are being raised at all levels. And here, both Mahila, Parishad, Naripokkho, we're all using our various networks and alliances of women's rights groups to make sure that, we are not invisibilized. And another thing is, I think, how to avoid being politicized or getting a stamp of any one party. That the Reform Commission reports are something that belongs to the movement, and not just the interim government or any government that comes in. So that's also a struggle that Shireen can also speak to.
Okay, thank you. I think there's some very, very valuable and practical suggestions. Yes, Shireen, your concluding remarks.
Okay, I think Fawzia and Maheen have actually raised a lot of important issues. I think one of the things that I have been taken aback by is the conservatism of the young people who have also recently formed their own party. This was not expected. I mean, they are a much younger generation, and we expect that people will become broader, more liberal, as certainly than we were. But I find that actually my generation is been much more progressive about the issue of equality and about the issue of rights for women and other marginalized groups than some of the young leaders today. Most recently, an unfortunate incident, in my view, is that a very frontline activist was actually excluded from the platform when it was revealed by some people that he was gay. So this is something that I did not expect, and it disappoints me to no end. The other is that from our commission, we actually talked about women being a cross-cutting issue. And therefore, it is something that actually was of importance to all the other commissions that were formed. So we tried to meet with all the other commissions. The only commission which could not give us time was the Constitution Commission. And later, when I met the head of the Constitution Commission, I actually confronted him and I said, "You think women have nothing to say about the Constitution?" And he had actually no reply. So these things disappoint you, because at a time when you are expecting a lot of, that it's a historical opportunity to initiate a lot of important and fundamental changes, it's actually not, the reality is not that big. Yeah. So one of the things that we found with the other thing is, for example, one of the leading lights of the movement, the anti-discrimination movement, Umama Fatima, she has just resigned. and she has made public her resignation and her disappointment with where the anti-discrimination movement finally went. So there is a lot of disappointment all around. But as Maheen says, we have decided as a strategy to lie low and to start working with institutional interventions. And so we've been meeting with different ministries. And as she said, that we are also working closely with the Labour Commission, because they have supported us a lot and we have supported them. And we've actually sat together before submitting our reports so that we are aligned with each other on some of the core issues. And so in a sense, we are thinking of introducing institutional interventions in different ministries which are open to us. And the other thing is to try and make use of public fora as much as possible to talk about our recommendations and to clarify some of the confusion and miscommunication around our proposals.
Thank you. Thank you, Shireen, for the bad cough. Shakila, do you want to say anything towards strategy? Because you did mention a number of things. If you have a minute also, and then we'll open it to the floor. You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. My network is a little bit slow, so I hear your voice.
শাকিলা, তুমি একটু জোরে বলো, শোনা যাচ্ছে না।
Okay, thank you. Could you hear me?
Yes. If you have anything more to say in the suggestions as a young voice after what we've already heard. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Ji.
My network is a little bit slow, so I heard you.
If you have to add anything to the suggestions that have already come as strategy, please do add.
Yes, I think our representative is in the interim government now, so I think they could make some fundamental step for women rights and for their colleague activists. I think Shireen just said that Nur Fatma has resigned. I think this is an alarming situation for us to take part in decision making and in group standing policy making. So I think the one fellow, Asif, is now an advisor of our interim government. I will call him for take some step to make sure that our women would not face any discrimination or any bullying. And then I want to say that I am working with some of our allies NGOs, and we perform some activities. I want to say to them that our activities that we take, we perform well, but I think that they all the time they are not representing our rights or what we want. So I think that they could be most vocal in that issues, that what we want and what is our basic right. I think that will play a role in save our women from our social discrimination.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, yes, one has to work with the youth and your representatives to take forward the voices of young women and other women in society. So with this, I first of all want to thank everybody. Many insights, a lot of challenges and the changing nature of challenges and their expression, but also the kind of strategies that we need to work upon to take the agenda. The struggle has to continue. It's a continuous struggle, as Dr. Fawzia said, and all of us realize. I would like to now open up for questions. Sarita, are there questions in the chat group? Maybe you could raise those, and we can ask. People can just put up their hand, and we can take
I
back
think yeah,
some
I think
questions.
there's a couple of questions from Lolly. If Lolly can come in and ask her question. There are a
Yes,
couple very good questions from Lolly.
Dalita Ramdas. Yes,
Yeah.
Lolly, would you like to please?
I'm here. All right. First of all, it's been wonderful listening to you all. Thank you so much. I think what it has done is to really open our eyes in other parts of this region as to so much that is going on literally right next door, and about which, frankly, we hear too little. And it is this that actually has, sort of made me raise the question that I've put in the chat box. First of all, that you are an amazing group of women who are working against such odds, and to have been able to come up with a report and to continue to push for so many of the provisions and suggestions you made, I think is really fantastic. But I'm just wondering, 2, 3 points. Has there been any link that you people have either made or are thinking about connecting to other women's groups in other countries in South Asia? Would that in any way, you think, strengthen or maybe, hinder your own struggles? Because so many of the issues that you are raising are common issues, and which might therefore also help us to devise strategies which could probably work, well, not just in Bangladesh, but elsewhere too. So if there are any comments or thoughts, I think it would be very important, particularly since as Sapan, we are trying to build solidarities across the region. And I think that bringing women together is a very, very important part of the entire effort that we need to make going forward. Because I don't think any of these problems, and you've touched on many, they're not unique to just one country, one culture, one religion, or whatever. These are shared ones that I think have to deal with our fight against patriarchy, misogyny, and I think therefore that is what motivates the question I'm asking. So anyone who would like to talk to that, I'd love to hear you. I think we would all love to hear you. And again, thank you. It's been wonderful. Congratulations.
Yes, who will take the question? Shireen, Maheen, anyone? You're muted, Shireen.
Can you repeat the question, Rani?
The question was that have you and women in Bangladesh reached out or made links with other women's groups in the region for support? Because the issues are common. We all are faced with similar ones in different intensities and responses. And how can we create that solidarity, regional solidarity on these issues?
Rani, would you allow me
that
to
was the
repeat the
question,
question? Rani, would you please allow me to say,
Mhm.
my question was exactly the same for which I had raised up my hand. So I'll just elaborate a little more because it was going
Okay.
one step further, as Lolly
Okay.
very, very rightly said. But she was asking you a question. I'm not asking you a question. I'm actually requesting you to do that. Like the next step is we need to do one thing. All those 480 or 460, whatever the number was, the Ds, those Ds as a package should circulate around all of us, because and it's not that maybe, but it's definitely the women's issues are all similar across the that part of the world. Yet not only that part of the world, wherever there are Muslim men, the women's issues are usually similar. So I'll even to the extent that one day I was speaking somewhere and he asked me, "Are you from Egypt? Have you read a lot of Nawal al-Saadawi's books?" I said, "No, not even known." But what you're saying is exactly what. So it extends all the way to Egypt and all the way all over. So the issue is basically almost the same, although we may say patriarchy or whatever. it's all one religion only. So let's come to the point. There are many women who even know this religion very well, and yet they think women's rights are priority. So they may blame us that we don't know religion, but we know people who know religion, and yet we can even consult with them to rectify wherever they think their points, not our points. Our 484, I'm sure, I have a belief that you all have come up with the best possible Ds, but these Ds are not so difficult to adapt to, even if we pick that one particular religion, which unfortunately your country has picked, and there are forces behind that too. We know that. So we need to even talk to them. So yeah, we need all those 484 or 82 Ds to be circulated around wherever possible. You may want a low profile within the country, but to all the linked groups, like-minded groups, or those who have the same mission, we must go through them too. And we need to scrutinize, actually even want to critically scrutinize your 400 whatever points. What is wrong in there? Why is it emanating such a backlash? Because that backlash is not only going to stay in Bangladesh, it's going to put all of us 2 steps backwards. So we are all interested and
everywhere.
Everywhere. Thank you so much. This point was great, Lolly. Thank you for picking it up and reading my mind already. And it was not only a point; it was like a burning issue. I really want those. We're curious to know your report. Thank you.
Yes, Shireen.
I think the issue of solidarity is definitely important. And I think we all agree on that there's need for more active solidarity between women's organizations and movements in each of our countries. However, there is also a political barrier. For example, right now, the sentiment, the anti-Indian sentiment in Bangladesh is very strong because of India's almost blind support to the Hasina regime for 15 years and propping up that regime in many ways. There are actually reports which suggest that India was complicit in the rigging of the elections. So these are things that the women's movement is unable to set aside and then just proceed. Although we have personal friendships that, cut across any border. But these are also some of the geopolitical realities that divide us and divide us as movements, as organizations, even though personal friendships continue to flourish. So this is something that I'm not sure how we can strategize around that, but we need to meet more often, for example. And that has become a resource issue, that resources are not as available as they were in the lead up to Beijing, for example, when we met frequently and when there was a very strong spirit of the movement reflected in our coming together in Beijing, and then finally reflected in the Beijing Platform for Action. So I don't see either of those things happening very soon. But at least now Sapan, for example, has provided a space for us to come together as South Asians. But we need to reach out beyond South Asia, to Southeast Asia, to West Asia, and other continents as well, especially Africa, I think. So I hope that something like the Sapan initiative can happen. And given the technology now, it's easier to meet as we are meeting over Zoom and doesn't involve plane fares and hotels, etc. So on that note, I would say, I think this is something we should look forward to doing more actively.
Absolutely, you're right. And I remember there was a time when we were under martial law, and there was a lot of support coming from outside, and we said, don't make it too expressive because that will have another backlash on us. So we have to be aware of the political exigencies and the sensitivities. But our solidarity remains, and I think that's a great idea to be able to meet across regions. And actually, we want this discussion to move beyond South Asia to other regions also. So hopefully we can plan on that. The other question that came up, but we would still like to read your report, because I think it's the way it's structured is it's a very practical way of doing it. And what is surprising and not shocking, at least, is the fact that women's dreams threaten people, and and we have to still dream away, regardless of the threats that they pose. There was another question here.
We hope there will be a translated version soon, in which case we'll of course share it with all of you.
Oh, thank you so much. It would be very, very useful. Somebody has asked in the chat group about what do you mean by lying low? Maheen, maybe you want to answer that, or Shireen, anyone?
That it's very simple in the sense of sometimes it's like staying off social media, not making a public statement of what we're doing. Sometimes it means just instead of confronting the opposition, just going and working with the ministries and getting the job done. So, lying low is not unnecessarily engaging in all battles, or rather choosing your battles, that you don't have to fight on all fronts at this same time.
May I add to this?
Somebody? Yes, yes.
I think it is not the question of lying low. It is a question to respond accordingly with women's cause, not to divulge the issue to other things, just to be strict with the women issue. That will be good for us at the moment.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Any more questions, issues? Then we can. If none coming, I'd like to thank. Is there anybody else, Sarita? Can you see anyone? I can't.
I don't know why aren't
I
people
don't
asking
see.
questions. They
I
should.
thought Naila was raising her hand, Naila
Somebody's-
Kabir, but
yeah,
she may
Yes,
have gone.
Naila. Oh, she's gone?
Oh, she
Naila,
was
are you
raising
there?
her hands.
Sorry, I
If
missed. I
if
mean, I didn't
anyone
see that.
if anyone has any question, maybe raise your hand so we can give you a space. You can unmute yourself, Naila.
Mm-hmm.
You can unmute and be here.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, yes, of course.
Are there, I don't know how you mentioned somebody being excluded because he was gay. Is there a possibility of queer movement and women's movement combining forces to oppose patriarchal problems?
I don't know about the women's movement as a whole, but Naripokkho has provided a safe space for gays and lesbians, and we have, in principle, stood with each other. And even during this struggle, they were very much part of the struggle. And what I mentioned was a very, very unfortunate incident, and which has disappointed me to no end.
Okay. Thanks. I think we are coming to the end of this.
Naila has unmuted, Ranish.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I just have a very brief point, and it's about religion. It's
Mm.
cropped up again and again. And as someone said, this is not just about Islam. It's about very reactionary readings of all religions. I'm not familiar enough with Sapan, but I think at some stage we do need to make a statement about not being against religion per se, but being against forms of religion that are used to hammer each other minorities and women in each religion. So I think in Bangladesh, there's some discussion going on about whether the word secularism gave out the wrong message, whether we should be talking about pluralism, whether we should be talking about religious freedom. I don't know what the language is. I don't think we can ignore religion. It is important for many people at the grassroots level. It's a part of their lived realities. But we want to communicate that we're not against their belief systems. What we are against is the way that religion has been politicized in order to both hammer people who are minorities in the country and hammer women in within their own religions. So I'm not sure if this is the time to say that, but at some stage, that is a message I think we want to communicate.
That you've made a point really, Naila, because people do have faith in whatever they believe, and we don't want to question their beliefs, but we do want to question the way those beliefs are used for power struggles and gaining power. So I think that's the point well made. And we do have internal discussions on those points, but I think we need to see how to address that. Thank you. Thanks. That's very insightful.
If I can just come in very briefly, Rani,
yes,
to what Mahila has just said, I think she's 100% right. And really, we need to be doing this sooner rather than later. I don't know how many of you have followed the fact that just yesterday in India, there has been a demand to remove the words secularism and socialism from the constitution. This has obviously come from the right-wing sources, from the RSS. I think a lot of it has also got to do with the fact that we have never fully had a debate or an understanding of unpacking what actually does secularism mean. In the Western context, it had a particular connotation. But I think in our context, they are, different. But I think we do need to address it. We need to talk about these and maybe dispel some of the misgivings and misinterpretations. But most definitely, I think to be clear that it is not religion that we are against, or whatever religious source or what our belief systems are, but it's the patriarchy, which is a common factor of every religion. And that is what leads to the oppression of women and, whatever. I mean, that I think we have to figure out how we are actually going to strengthen that and then come together regardless of our politics, because whether it's what's happening in Bangladesh today or what's happening, well, in our country, Pakistan, wherever, that I think is something that we also need to build a strategy around so that we don't, I think the strategy of being invisible or going under the radar is good. But I think that is what we then need to do, is to strengthen each other's, vulnerabilities, and to know that we are there for each other when there is some kind of a threat or a danger or whatever it is. Sorry for prolonging things, Rani, but I just wanted to, since Naila had raised this, I think it's a very important point. Thanks.
I think it's an important point. I agree. I think we need more thought and discussion on that. And I'm so glad that a lot of issues have come up here, which actually ultimately lead to solidarity, women's solidarity, and go beyond our borders and beyond the region also. So I would like to, first of all, thank all the panelists. They've really given us shared a lot of information that we didn't have. Also highlighted, I think this report of yours could be the point of reference for a lot of us. We would like to see it and then maybe act on it. And I would like,
Rani?
after thanking everyone, I'm not going to summarize the discussion because the discussion has been extremely rich and wide-ranging. Did somebody say anything?
Khushi has her hands up.
Anyway, so
Maybe
I'd like, no, I'm going to hand over to Urvashi anyway now, because I think I've done, we've had a good discussion. Urvashi?
How about a
Yeah, thank
I
you.
can see your hand.
Thanks, Rani. I think we have to take a picture first. So
I think we've taken pictures, so maybe
it's
or we
okay.
don't need to take any more.
No,
Okay.
no, I need to take a picture, Bina.
You do need to take a picture.
Okay.
Okay. So if everyone can turn their videos on. Yeah. Are we done?
Okay.
Just
Yes,
a second.
Sarita?
Give me a second. I'm trying to go into the gallery view. I think if it keeps changing back to speaker view, give me a sec. Yeah, we're all set.
All set? Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rani, so much for moderating the discussion and holding it together so well. Thank you, all the participants. I'm not even going to attempt to sum up the discussion or anything because a lot has been said. But I just wanted to say that as I was listening to everybody talk, I was thinking that however small the range of this kind of discussion, the fact that we came together to talk and listen with empathy and with solidarity really in some ways extends the issues beyond our borders and allows us to think together. So I think there's a great deal of value in that. And I hope that we'll continue to do so. This is the kind of discussion that Sapan would like to facilitate taking forward and hopefully to have some impact in the region. I have a request to all of you before we close. As you know, Sapan is a voluntary organization. We really appreciate donations to help us cover the operating costs. So please, if you can, do contribute using the link in the chat to make a tax-deductible donation. Someone in our team will put up the link in the chat box and you could contribute. Apart from this, huge thanks to everyone who made this event possible. And, you know, the putting together of an event like this does take a lot of doing. So please bear with me while I thank everybody by name. All of you who are watching, special thanks to you and to all the panelists, Shireen Haq, Shakila Khatun, Maheen Sultan, Fawzia Moslem, and discussion moderator Khawar Mumtaz, who all of us call Rani. And Rani, who was also involved in conceptualizing this discussion, and of course, Khushi Kabir in Dhaka, without whom we wouldn't have been able to do anything. Thank you also to Sapan volunteers behind the scenes who helped to make this event possible. The super efficient Sarita Bartola, the always creative Bina Sarwar, the wonderfully sort of technically thought out Fawzia Diba, and then Pragyan Srivastava and Saifullah Saifi, and I'm Urvashi. Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Goodbye for now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to see
Thank you very
everybody
much.
and meet up.